You're watching CES Live, powered by Ustream.tv, the most powerful way to stream live video. And by UTech, makers of the TriCaster family of broadcast and streaming systems. And now, CES Live.
Hey guys, welcome back to the continuing coverage of CES 2015. I'm John P.
I am Sean Captain.
And we are in charge of this crazy panel we're about to have right now.
Well, they may take charge, actually.
That's true.
We're kind of hoping for that, actually. We want to hear some good stuff.
That's true. So Sean and I are very happy because we are going to all have a discussion together about 4K technology. And we have two absolute experts here joining us. We've got Dan from Samsung, and we've also got David from JVC. So thank you for joining us, guys.
Well, thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
We are very happy to be here.
Now, just to set this up a little bit, okay, I want to point out that we've got a wide range of knowledge bases here. Okay, Sean is the smart one on this side over here. Okay, I'm the guy who doesn't know anything.
Well, if you know less than me, I feel bad for you.
That's good. So, and then, but David is from JVC, and David is more on the side of like cameras and production and capture, let's say creation of, he's going to be helping us. All he does more, you do more.
The Pro Division, so it's procreation.
Right, oh, it's procreation, right, perfect. He's an expert on procreation.
Make 4K, not war. Okay.
And then we've also got Dan, who's going to be helping us from Samsung with more of the expertise on the display kind of, panels.
On the consumer side.
Consumer tech and stuff like that. Okay, and so I'm going to be playing the role of idiot, which I'm really, I'm expert at that. But I guess the first thing that I would just tee this conversation off with is 4K actually here yet?
Of course it is.
I mean, it's kind of like if a tree falls in the wood and nobody's around. I mean, I have no idea. I literally don't know. Are people buying the 4K TVs? Are they consuming 4K content?
People were asking that question about HD 20 years ago when in 1984, they shot the Olympics in LA in HD, and people were saying, well, what is that, And people would get up close to a monitor and say, my God, this looks like 3D. It's so much resolution, I don't know if I can stand it.
Yeah.
And it's taken a while, but HD has worked its way through the process of becoming dominant. And now we're seeing the same thing about 4K. It's not going to happen overnight.
And that's a great point, because if I want to go back and watch the Olympics in 1984, it'll actually look good, because it was shot in the technology that
that's right.
HD
That's very important.
Settling for what you have.
Yeah, but on the consumer side, you walk into your big box store, your favorite electronics store, you're going to see a large display, or a large percentage of the TVs supporting 4K. And it's they're here now. They're available.
I have certainly seen a lot of price drops for 4K over the last couple of years, and we're seeing all kinds of panels from really, really cheap kind of like $500 range up to several thousand. Like Samsung has a beautiful curved 4K 3D television that's at the higher end of the price range. We see it all along. Mm-hmm. Are people going in now and saying, okay, there's a 1080p TV for like $400, but for like a few hundred more, I could get a 4K. Will they do it? Do they know it well enough yet?
Well, I think that even if they don't know, they're going to see the difference in the store. So there's these great TVs labeled 4K, or as CEA states, ultra high definition. Ultra high definition, 4K ultra high definition, which is the name they'll see, common name throughout the industry. These TVs deliver a certain resolution, which is, it's like a camera, right? It's like pixels. It's defined, but there's a lot of other picture quality attributes that really make this spectacular. And we're probably going to get into the discussion of content, but one thing to keep in mind is these TVs display current content. They do up conversion. It's not certainly not of the caliber of capture, 4K capture, but this makes all of the content that you normally watch, be it broadcast TV or Blu-ray, today's Blu-ray I should say, look so much better. So it's demonstrable.
It's kind of like, I guess, when you had 720p and people would buy a Blu-ray player and it was 1080p and it would do up conversion of DVDs or something, and just makes them just look better.
Well, it's still happening now. You said 720p. Half of the broadcasters in this country, ABC, Fox, and ESPN, are all 720p.
Why are they doing that? Why would they on YouTube you can get 1080p. You
Well,
can get 4K on YouTube. Why would they do that?
And the other half are 1080i, which you could say is half of HD. So we're not full HD yet in America.
David, you guys need to sell them some new cameras
Oh,
over
they
there.
all have the ability in the cameras.
Oh,
okay.
And what's amazing,
It's the other side of the equation, and I think I have to really go back and look at some of the problems that had to have been overcome with the adoption of HD. And I don't want to throw too much ice water on this, but to be realistic, this migration to HD came about largely because of the migration to flat panels.
Yeah.
We had a change in form factor. If you remember back before we all had flat panels, we had these great big beastly things that were hard to retail.
That's
you
right.
know, a 36-inch CRT television weighed 175 pounds. You couldn't just drop one in your shopping cart and stick it in your SUV. The sleek look of the flat panel was very popular. I like to say they even look better in the 1 pixel mode with the power off, because it became a style thing that people put in their homes, and maybe curved will become the next style fashion thing, regardless of what resolution you have. But the adoption of HD sort of came about because of this migration to a new form factor. And I like to also point out the adoption of DVDs took place almost overnight from VHS, and believe me, I know VHS well. I've been with JVC for 35 years. We invented VHS, and when VHS disappeared, whoops, because the migration wasn't because of the picture quality. We had digital VHS, we had HD that we could do in very high quality, Super VHS, we had all of the picture quality attributes, but when the form factor changed to that convenient little disc, everybody dumped VHS. And that was a change that has not been replicated with the migration to Blu-ray. I still think, and you can correct me on the numbers, I still think about 70% of the discs that are watched out there are DVDs. And it's been a problem for the industry to try to get people to buy into the higher pixel count. So we've got these problems that are lingering, and we've got half of America still watching 720p, and the challenge is going to be to convince people that, well, more pixels are better, so we'll jump into 4K.
I think that's, people brought up a lot as a challenge for 4K, and then even for 3D, if anybody remembers 3D, was they said, well, when flat panels came out, it's because they were flat. HD was part of it, but really it's like, it's thin, I can carry it, I can put it somewhere. Whereas like 4K, you've got to convince someone, or you've got to show someone, like, no, this is a quality thing. Like, you're actually going to appreciate the quality of it.
That's true. So a lot of times you see the extra resolution if you're up close, but
yeah.
we're sort of at Gen 2 now of the 4K world right now. So
Okay.
we had the first wave of introduction, and the folks that are lucky enough to get to CES or see footage of some of these great products from CES, we're now seeing the second generation of products, and they're actually expanding on just resolution. So the term 4K Ultra HD, it's really larger than just a resolution play. It's the wider color gamut, it's the higher bit depth, and maybe, stop me if I'm throwing out too many.
We want to talk about this. In fact, Sean and I were talking about
Yeah.
this. We were talking about this before the broadcast, and I made him stop
Yeah.
because you were saying that for you, the resolution was not the thing that was so impressive right now.
Well, yeah, because by the way, you had me at color gamut.
Okay.
Well, no, because it's everyone's been talking about resolution and the whole thing. Like, well, I'm sitting 3 feet back, I can't see it. But I think the sleeper story, or maybe not much longer, has been that 4K is just one part of this whole, basically recreating the cinema experience. So it's a wider color gamut, and you'll tell us what that means.
Of course, yeah.
And also a high dynamic range, I think also.
High
right?
dynamic range as well, yes.
Yeah, so sell me on the color gamut.
Okay, so the color gamut, So on the production side, and you can maybe explain some of the on the camera side, but cameras are able to capture incredible, almost the color range close to the human eye, if I'm not mistaken. Much wider, probably at least 35-40% wider than what's out there today. So, the color palette we've had is now, I'm going to throw out a term, Rec 709, which is, I don't know, 15, 20 years old? It's 20 years old.
And that's not so different from what CRTs have, right?
Yeah, it's no different. So we're going from a color space, right? It's mathematical color space. Yeah. We're almost doubling it. It's so the range it's really the range of colors that can be.
We talk about that triangle. It's like
that
you have that
exactly,
red, blue, and green, right?
That's right.
And
the
all
three
the colors
primaries
kind
and
of
the wavelengths around the edge.
They're all kind of like mashed in between until you get to
That's
white.
right.
And you're saying, so when you're talking about the color gamut, you're pulling it out.
We're pulling it out.
You're saying more green, more red, more blue.
Exactly.
Right? And all those shades.
Exactly. And all the shades in between.
Okay.
Right. So those are being captured, and with some of these new distribution technologies, and we can get into that conversation later, but they're being captured, and now with the TVs that you're seeing here, the second wave of 4K TVs, with things like quantum dot, which is another discussion, but it's an enabler to widen that triangle, to produce more colors.
I don't know anything about this, but I heard somebody say, totally. Actually, I just changed the subject on you, which I didn't mean to, but I heard one thing that I don't know anything about, but I heard that somebody was putting they were adding lasers into the TV to make redder reds. Is that a gimmick or is that real? Did you hear about this?
It's
like a laser red thing.
Philips.
I don't know.
I think Philips is doing red laser.
Red lasers to make red redder.
Right.
I don't know.
Here's where we're going.
The laser's really red.
Here's where we're driving at. It's not just to add more color just for the sake of adding more color. It's to preserve artistic intent. And what I mean by that is producers are using equipment, JVC and other professional cameras, to capture, and they have a vision of what things should look like and the set that they're capturing, and they want these things to be accurately captured, distributed, and displayed properly. And right now, a lot of times the only place to see things properly displayed is in theatrical showings. And we're trying to bring that theatrical showing home.
Which brings up an interesting point, because we're talking about 4K, and the Digital Cinema Initiative, the DCI spec for 4K is 4096 by 2160.
Oh.
Well, what everybody with flat panel
Okay.
TVs is talking about is Ultra HD, which is 3840 by 2160.
Right,
the same size pixels, but there are more of them with DCI, which means the aspect ratio is no longer 16 by 9. And that starts to pose a problem.
Yeah.
Because if you've been around
we
for
get back to
a number of
letterboxing
years,
and crap
we're
like
be
that.
Immediately letterboxing everything if you're watching a 16 by 9 screen. And then if you go to a wider aspect ratio, a 235 or a 2.0, then you've even got more letterboxing.
Yeah.
So that's going to be an area that's going to have to be resolved. But I think what most of us here are talking about is a Ultra HD experience with 3840 by 2160.
Right. With wider color.
Right.
With wider color and more dynamic range. And here's the thing about dynamic range. Your viewers may want to Google it. Bernie Lechner did research some time ago about perceived resolution and viewing distance. And he came up with a formula, and they call it the Lechner distance. And he determined that with a 42-inch 1080 set, in order to appreciate 1080 on that set, you have to be sitting 5.5 feet away from the set. The average home viewer sits 9 feet from the set. So that can explain in part why 720p has been no problem for the TV networks.
Even if it was there, they wouldn't perceive it.
They're not going to see the difference. Now, an 84-inch 4K set has exactly the same size pixels as a 42-inch 1080 set. You have basically 4 of them.
Yeah.
So according to the Lechner distance, you still need to be 5.5 feet away to get the full 4K experience if you're just talking about pixel viewing. And a lot of people say, well, gee, that's great. I have a much more immersive experience if I'm sitting 5.5 feet from my TV. But we've just whittled the market down to a few people, because not everybody sits 5.5 feet from their TV.
Okay, but how How about 8K? Because if you've got 8K, you basically, I mean, 4K is like 4 1080p's,
Yeah, now
right?
you have to sit 2.5 feet.
Yeah, 8K is like four.
Or get a bigger TV.
It's like 4 4Ks, right? 8K is like 4 4Ks, so it's like 16 1080p's.
It's 16 1080p's.
Right.
But if you're sitting, let's say, 10 feet away, now if you sit 10 feet away, is that relatively the same? So now, people, you've seen 8K. What did you think about it?
Well, I stood really close to it and I thought it was amazing because I couldn't see any pixels. It was like when cell phones first started having retina displays or things like that, and you could hold it right up and you're like, I'm looking at
a picture,
a
real thing,
like
not even a picture, a thing,
Yeah.
right?
NHK has had a great display at NAB for several years of 8K projected with a 24-channel surround sound. It's phenomenal.
And that's the Japanese broadcaster?
Yes.
NHK? Okay.
Yeah, in fact, they're using JVC projectors in that display. We've developed, and we've been working alongside of NHK and with Boeing also to develop 8K projection for really not consumer applications.
Yeah, what would you use that for? I mean,
Well,
I want one, don't get me wrong, but I'm
I'll
just
find
saying,
you.
what
Many
do you
of
use it
today's
for?
applications are commercial or commercial based.
They are, yeah.
What you're seeing and a little bit at CES is some of these displays are used for auto stereo, and that's basically 3D without glasses.
Oh yeah.
The resolution is high enough that brings a very good experience of 3D, without the burden of glasses, which it's pretty impressive. And that could be that could also be for commercial purposes or in the home as well.
Right, like simulation, training kind of
Simulation
Exactly,
is
yeah.
very important. If you get on an airplane, you want the pilot to be well trained.
Yes.
Yeah.
And,
Yes.
and Boeing recognizes that,
Yeah.
and what they do is they use these projectors, multiples of the projectors, to create a visual experience that has a parity with the human eye, so that what they experience in a flight simulator is exactly what they see in the aircraft. And so it's very important, and in military training, even control towers use rear projection for air traffic controller simulation. So there are a lot of applications outside of the consumer market for this, and that will help drive other products that will make it into the consumer market.
May I?
Go ahead.
There is a concept you've probably heard of called the uncanny valley, where something is so close to looking real that it freaks you out. Because
Yeah,
you
they
know
talk
it's
about
not
robots
real.
a lot like that.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
They creep people out.
Exactly, and so if we have now color space that matches what the human eye sees, we have, because I believe NHK determined that NHK determined that 8K is very close to the amount of detail you see in real life, and we have dynamic range, and you're looking at a screen. It's like originally when the Lumiere brothers did the train coming at you, and everyone jumped away in the theater because they thought a train was actually coming at them.
It really is true.
So what, is this going to freak people out?
No, we hope not. Yeah. No, it's of course it depends on the content. If you're looking at a roller coaster or something, it might.
Then you want them to, right? Yeah.
In some cases, some content might be intentionally created that way. But just pulling this back to 4K, because that's what's really here today in a big way. We've already talked about the resolution. We've talked about the expanded color, and all of these things make a more immersive experience. You're seeing curved TVs now, second wave of curved TVs, which actually increase your field of view a little bit, sort of like the theater in some theaters have a curved screen.
Movie theaters have that.
Movie theaters have a curved screen.
Well, by the way, before we move on for that, can we just touch on that? Because several people in our building at the Geek House, we have one of those 78-inch curved Samsung TVs. The most frequently asked question people ask me is, why is it curved?
Okay, so
why is it curved? Can we talk
several
about
reasons.
that? Yeah.
Okay, so one I touched on, it adds, at the proper viewing distance, your field of view is slightly larger, so that's one. And there's some correlation between field of view and immersion. The thought of being there. Just like the big screen in the theater, right? It's more
When you
realistic.
say the field of view, is that because, for example, at the right distance, I'm kind of equidistant from the center and from the edge, where on a flat one, I'm further from the edge and I'm closer to the center?
Exactly, that's one. And it's filling up your periphery, right? Your peripheral vision. So that's one. It also creates, depending on your seating, it's not that you have to sit in the center. You can sit at there's a greater range of seating. and actually to have still a great view of the set. And actually, believe it or not, less geometric distortion than you have on a flat screen.
Okay, cool.
So that's another.
Sorry for that sidebar. Keep going now.
And the third is actually, because it's curved, that's often there's less glare, especially when you have room lighting,
I think
floor lamp behind you. Or,
that's an easy one to relate to.
That's an easy one.
TVs
So
have
all of
such
those
glare.
things, and plus it looks great. I mean,
It does. It's sexy.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about
it's
it.
sexy.
Would it, if you curve it more, would you get more immersive? Is it something that you have a certain amount of curve because you're cutting edge?
It gets to be a challenge at a certain.
Yeah.
Well, it becomes a challenge for us too, because once you start changing the plane of view, we have to make adjustments in what we shoot. I mean, you could go 360 degrees, and there are 360-degree video systems, but we have to change the way we shoot.
Yeah.
Because lenses still, no matter what aspect ratio you have, a lens still produces a round image. So you pick, whether it's that camera or a professional broadcast camera, the lens is going to produce a round image, and within that round image, we create a rectangular frame. And usually that's 16 by 9. Now, there's a lot of the image that doesn't get shot because of that.
Right.
You could conceivably have a much vertically, a much bigger viewing experience if you did that. I think that's sort of the idea behind IMAX.
Yeah.
That you actually get away from the widescreen, you have it as tall as you have wide.
But let's, okay, I'm going to totally shift gears because we've been talking about things from the perspective of maybe what the viewers watch and what's concerning them. I have a totally different set of concerns, okay? We do, on this side of the table, have a totally different set of concerns because we produce content. We are the ones who are responsible for filling up your beautiful 4K projectors or TVs or whatever. And right now, if you look around, this is 1080p, okay? And so, from our perspective, there are a number of challenges. One, what kind of capture devices are we going to use? And from that particular angle, cost is a factor, for some more than others.
It's becoming less of a factor, but there are bigger issues than that. And I think, I can answer most of those questions.
Yep.
We introduced our first small handheld 4K camcorder 3 years ago.
Yeah.
At the time, and we could do 3840 by 2160 at 60p. But in order to do that, we used 4 processors in the camera because there's a lot of data. Uncompressed, uncompressed 4K is about 12 gigabits per second. You got a lot of bandwidth. You're not going to get that through your online system here. But in order to do that with that camera 3 years ago, we had to record on 4 SD cards simultaneously.
Right.
And that was kind of a pain in the neck in post-production. We could play it back and everything, but to do it in post-production, you had to run it through a utility, and then you had a very large, huge file that you could edit.
And workflow is one of those big issues,
well,
one of those big challenges.
That's the challenge for you.
Far bigger challenge, because it takes nothing for us to just change out these cameras right here, but those cameras feed into a live broadcast switcher. In this case, it's a TriCaster, and even though that's the biggest, most expensive TriCaster they make, it won't do 4K.
Well, okay, that's true, and
Yes.
there are switchers. Most of the broadcast switchers that are used in TV stations can, because
they will.
They
cost $1 million, right?
Well,
or whatever.
they are.
Today.
The
Maybe
Kahuna
today.
switchers can cost up to $1 million, and they can gang together 4 inputs. If you have a 36 input switcher, you can gang together those and use those as 4K. I mean, they've thought about that. But for instance, here at CES, we're introducing 2 new 4K camcorders. One of them is under $3,000. It's got the ability to record 3840 by 2160 at 150 megabits per second on one SD card. Now, we're getting a little more reasonable. 150 megabits is still a lot of data.
Yeah.
And what happens, the camcorder also, by the way, will stream directly to Ustream in HD. You can just change the mode of the camera, and you can output from that camera all by itself. You can get rid of all this equipment. everything, the TriCaster, everything.
Yeah, you could.
Just get rid of it, put one camera there.
Yeah, single camera shot,
and
stream it live.
push one button on the camera and go right to Ustream and broadcast to the world. Kind of cool.
Yeah, very cool.
There are a lot of applications for that, but
you also, by the way, have a brand new camera coming out that's 4K with SDI built into it for, I think, coming out at around $2,800, which I've got my eye on.
That's the camera I'm talking about.
Is that the one? Okay, yeah.
Here's the thing about that, though. That stream that we send out to Ustream in HD, probably going to be around 3 megabits per second.
Right.
Not 150. So
a little more reasonable.
The name of the game in distribution is to keep reducing the bit rate down and keep reducing it until people scream. They can't see the difference. And this happens in broadcast. This happens in cable. You want the best over-the-air picture quality from ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox? Put up an antenna. Because they're broadcasting at a higher bit rate over the air than you're getting through your cable box.
Sean has something really cool to show us, but I have one last technical question to ask you about while we're talking about this, which is the codecs. And like,
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I mean, we have to compress these streams to deliver them, and we use H.264 right now as one of our big standards. What about 4K, and where are we going with that?
Well, H.265 or HEVC is the preferred codec now, but getting it onto silicone on an encoder is not that easy. And to do it in a product that is very small and has low power consumption is even more difficult. So, I mean, we'll get there. We don't have it now. You don't have that ability in your phone to be able to capture 4K and stream it out live with a encoded signal, but we will get there.
And you can capture it 4K in your phone.
You can. This is my favorite toy of the show, and I was just dying to show it. And this is not the only cell phone that will shoot 4K, but I love this one because this is.
Oh, let me get the camera out.
Oh
here.
yeah, that's right.
Sorry, we got it. We actually could do a little. We can
Look at
show this thing
Look at this.
Oh yeah,
it's a 4-camera shoot.
Yeah.
So this is the Panasonic Lumix CM1.
Is it a camera?
Or is it a phone? It really is a camera because you have a pretty sophisticated zoom lens system in here. You've got a much larger sensor. I think it's a 1-inch sensor, which is actually what could be used in a sort of a almost professional kind of camera.
Yeah, it's a big lens.
It's a huge lens.
For a camera slash phone, it's a big lens.
Absolutely, yeah. So we can put it in camera mode here.
Oh, and yeah, it just pops.
See the lens popped out. You know, you can zoom with it. You've got full kind of manual controls here. Once I figure out what menu I'm supposed to be in, and I'm in the wrong mode.
Panorama mode.
And I just shot a panorama that did not move anywhere. Let's see here. There we go. So let's just get to a regular mode here. So, you know, I'm zooming with it. I can switch to different kinds of modes. I've got full control. As if I'm using a real camera, I can, you know, control this zoom lens here, which is pretty fantastic. I can, and I'm just using this kind of dial
You're actually
here
manual ring dialing it there.
Yeah, it's as if you actually are using like a real camera. You can change things like aperture, which almost no phone has a physical aperture where you're controlling depth of field. And it shoots 4K. And I mean, getting to your point where you originally had 4 different SD cards you had to record to, all the complexity, and now, you know, it's in a phone, which will cost about $1,000, but a phone without a huge camera, and it costs about that as well.
So from a production standpoint now, all of a sudden, at least, we may be kind of not ready to broadcast live in 4K, but I guess there's really no damn excuse for us not to be recording at least in 4K.
Yeah, certainly archiving, recording, archiving, capture. You know, but there's some good news, and certainly I respect there's challenges on the production side, but you can stream 4K today. You know, there's Netflix is streaming 4K today,
that is
so
true.
You can see theatrical movies.
And I think on YouTube,
MGO, YouTube. I mean, you know, there's a lot of, you know, encoded in HEVC, which, by the way, most TVs today, certainly all the Samsung TVs, have a decoder to decode HEVC. And there's other ways to get high quality content. You mentioned that there's some compromises, which you're absolutely correct, there are. But if you want that higher quality, really take advantage of some of the capabilities of these sets, there's other ways to do that, and one that will be available very shortly is a download model. Very, very large file, a movie. I'm talking about a theatrical movie, maybe 35 to 50 gigabytes, downloaded to a hard drive through the internet, and then play it on your TV. And that's a way to get very, very high quality content.
And we've seen it. I mean, we've seen Sony's been doing that for I think about 2 or 3 years. They have their player, which now works, I guess, with all TVs, which everyone's excited about. Dish announced that they're going to be having on-demand movies.
That's right.
Come down in 4K, and Samsung is going to tell us. Big news.
Okay, we got some big news.
Do we have
let
some
me also
news?
add DirecTV. We shouldn't leave them out of the equation.
Oh, absolutely.
They have a 4K service today.
Correct.
It's a trickle download to their box, and displays on your TV through a technology called RView, which is also so there are ways to get theatrical content and enjoy it on your TV.
Red had a product called RedRay. Do they still have it? What's up with that? Do they still do the?
That's a camera.
No, RedRay is a player.
That was just
in
fact,
RedRay player.
We
Okay,
use them at trade show demos.
But
And
don't
I
they
don't
have-
know whether they're selling them or not.
I
But
thought they also did a download component to that as well. I can't remember.
well,
now.
that was what it was
announced it,
designed
That's
to.
what-
So
okay,
it
I'm
was a
sorry.
big
Okay, yeah.
server that
Yeah.
was designed to
okay.
capture and store movies and things like that content. When you get into the content business, you've got all the issues with Hollywood and dealing with copyrights and standards and everything else. And this is it's a can of worms that fortunately we only get a sliver of on the professional side, because we're still dealing with broadcasters who just want to get good HD out in the field, and they need to be able, and actually they're looking for more efficient ways to stream it back. They've been using microwaves and satellites, and now we can give them a camcorder that will stream live HD with nothing more than an LTE modem plugged into it or through Wi-Fi.
That's sweet.
And they love it. They save a couple of $100,000 on a truck, and they can do live news from anywhere, walking down the aisles here at the CES show. But for 4K, it becomes a whole new set of challenges for them. The broadcast industry is working on the next ATSC standard. We've been living with one since 1997, which defined the 18 different formats of SD and HD, and that's what all the TVs now are able to decode. Well, changing the broadcast standard is no easy process. There was a government mandate to switch to digital, but all the TV makers had to put this into their sets. The current standard does not support 4K. So the next standard will.
There's good news.
The good news is that the next standard is will, but now then, how do you get every manufacturer to build that new standard into the sets? And then you have a government set-top box program that's going to take care of the people who won't be able to receive their TV shows unless they have a new set-top box or decoder. Those are all issues that still have to be worked out. So we could be years away from that happening. But what is happening in the television distribution business is so different from what it was 20 years ago. Started talking about the 1984 Olympics. And we just saw, I guess, one of the important rounds fired here at CES with the announcement that ESPN would be available as an over-the-top service without subscribing to cable.
That's disruptive.
That is very disruptive, and I had somebody come up to me and said, that's going to really help 4K. Because now you've got, and you people
you
can
get go right around all that.
Well, a Roku box that does 4K can now get you your ESPN, and if ESPN wants to put out an over-the-top channel without cable that's in 4K, hey, you got it there.
And that
it's
can
up
also
to
go
them.
through a TV smart platform as well, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Of course.
absolutely.
Necessarily
It could
need
be
to
right
go
built
through
in. As
It doesn't have to be
external box.
Roku.
That's
Sure,
right.
sure.
Okay, guys, we have had. This has been awesome. This is like by far my favorite conversation I've had at CES. We actually took longer than I thought we were going to, which I'm really glad about.
I got one more.
But yes,
one more surprise.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
let's. We've got like 2 or 3 more minutes, so let's all the final thoughts and things. Let's just cram them out there.
So, in addition to representing Samsung, I also represent the Blu-ray Disc Association on the PR side, and some announcements we have to make at CES is there will be a next generation Blu-ray, and it has a name. It's Ultra HD Blu-ray.
Okay.
And you're probably going to ask when, right? So the timing, it's difficult to say when product will be in the market, but certain things have to happen. There's certain milestones that have to happen, and one of them is called licensing, right? It's, it's important. You know, the lawyers have to do their thing, but also right before licensing is also, you know, the spec has to be locked down. So licensing is expected to commence mid-year. So that means that the spec is locked down, and it's going to support things not only more, you know, the 4K resolution, the wide color gamut, the high frame rate, the higher color bit depth. You know, it's really exceeding what a lot of displays can even do today. So this is future, you know, trying to be future proofed.
So you think we'll see those discs by the end of the year?
It's up to the individual manufacturer when they release, but if you look back historically to when the spec was locked down, it's usually 5 or 6 months when you see product in market. Now, I can't make that guarantee, but you'll at least see announcements at the end of this year.
And do the discs actually hold more data than
They hold a lot more data, yes. They hold, there's 2 formats of discs. These are new discs that will, because they have to hold so much more data to comprise these extremely large files. There's a 66 and a 108 gigabyte disk, and also the throughput, the bandwidth that's required, it's up to 128 megabits per second.
Wow.
So, you know, obviously that would be a significant challenge for streaming, but for an optical disc player, that's obviously not. You know, to have that consistent, repeatable experience day in and day out.
Yeah, that's awesome. David, any final parting words of wisdom for everybody?
Well, 2 years ago I said it's not going to be anytime soon that we have a complete flushing of the HD standard with a replacement by 4K. I'll still stand by that statement. But I think what's happening in television is that the ways of getting television are becoming so diverse that this whole concept of a la carte, you get what you want, and there'll be plenty of people able to offer it to you. If you want 4K, you're going to be able to get 4K. If you want eventually 8K, you're going to be able to get 8K, because the whole industry is not going to be locked into one set of standards like we've grown up with. So I think it bodes well for the whole industry that it's not going to be the kind of television that I grew up with, that others grew up with. It's all different now, and it's really going to be up to the consumer to make those choices, because they're the ones that really decide. If there are 3 versions of the movie, and you can watch the SD version, the HD version, or the 4K, and there are 3 different prices, and there will be. The consumers will decide what they want to watch, how far they're sitting back, what they want to pay for, and that's a good thing.
The customer's still king, Sean. What do you think?
Customer being king again, actually, is what I would like.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because it has been a little rough to get your content, and that's right, it's just disrupting the whole industry, where you don't have to wait for the standards body, you don't have to wait to see what they want to offer you. And you know, I held up my favorite toy, and of course a lot of smartphones, including Samsung smartphones, shoot in 4K, and the reason why I brought that up is because in addition to the Blu-ray process, which takes a while, the streaming process, which takes a while, it's an upstart thing. Now anybody really, if you have a phone, you probably have a 4K camcorder, you can put it on YouTube, and I'm amazed at the quality of TV shows that people do in their apartment in Brooklyn. So I just think it's just another way where
user-generated content.
It can happen, but it's not just like horrible cat videos. I mean, there are great comedies and dramas. If you give people the tools and they're cheap, you get an amazing amount of stuff. So where's 4K? I mean, it's here, and you can stream it in 10 minutes when I upload it.
Nice.
So, looking around the show, we're certainly not a stagnant industry, right?
Not at all. Well, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you
Guys, thank you so much for watching. I think my takeaway from this is, Dave, we better upgrade the cameras pretty soon here.
Yeah.
So. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Thumbs up on YouTube. We'll get it up to 4K as quickly as we can, okay? Take care, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.